I still remember it as if it were yesterday. The day he bent down in that golden field, the sun setting behind us, the wind playing with strands of my hair, and his hands, those warm, trembling hands, tying a simple ring of foxtail grass around my finger. He smiled at me, that boyish smile that made my heart skip every single time, and whispered, "One day, I'll marry you. This is my promise." Back then, I thought it was the most romantic thing in the world. Not a diamond ring, not gold or silver, but a fragile ring made of foxtail grass. And yet, to me, it was worth more than the most expensive jewelry in the universe. Because it came from him, and because I believed in him. I, the foolish girl I was, believed in his every word. I was only 22 at the time, bright-eyed, naive, hopelessly in love with a man who seemed like the center of my world. His name was Adrian. He wasn't from a wealthy family, but he carried himself with confidence and charm that made people gravitate toward him. His eyes were deep and unreadable, like a stormy ocean that could drown you if you weren't careful. But I didn't see the storm then. I only saw the sparkle. To me, Adrian was everything. My best friend, my lover, my future. When he gave me that foxtail grass ring, I thought fate had sealed us together. I thought I had found my forever. Looking back now, I laugh at my own innocence. But at that moment, I was overwhelmed. My chest tightened with joy. My eyes brimmed with tears. I clutched his hand like it was the only lifeline I would ever need. "I'll wait for that day," I told him softly. "I'll wait for the day you make this promise real." He kissed my forehead, gentle as the breeze, and pulled me into his arms. And in that golden field, with nothing but the smell of earth and the sound of grass swaying around us, I felt like the happiest girl alive. But happiness, I would later learn, is the most fragile thing. It can be crushed in an instant, like that delicate foxtail grass ring. In my past life, that ring became the chain that bound me. It blinded me, shackled me, and kept me believing in a love that was never truly mine. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before the betrayal, before the heartbreak, before death and rebirth, I was still just a girl in love. A girl who thought love was enough. That evening, after he gave me the ring, we walked hand in hand back to the little town we lived in. The sun had already dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple, and I remember thinking that the heavens themselves were blessing our love. He talked about the future as if it were already written. How we'd build a small home together. How he'd work hard and make sure I'd never suffer. How I would be his wife, the mother of his children, the queen of his little world. And I believed him. Every word, every dream, every promise, because isn't that what love is supposed to be? Trusting, even when logic tells you to doubt. I didn't know then that his sweet promises were nothing but sugar-coated lies, but at that moment, I had no reason to doubt. He looked at me like I was his everything. He said the right words, held me the right way, made me feel like the only girl in his universe. So, of course, I gave him my whole heart. I gave him everything. That night, I placed the foxtail grass ring on my nightstand. I stared at it until I fell asleep. It wasn't sturdy. It wasn't everlasting. It was just a piece of grass twisted into a circle. But it was ours. And I thought that was enough. I didn't know then how much pain that tiny ring would bring me. I didn't know it would be the very symbol of my foolishness, of his betrayal, of the life I would lose. But fate has a cruel sense of irony. Because even in my second chance, even after death, Even when I was reborn, it was that same ring, that same promise, that same moment that I returned to. The day of the foxtail grass ring. But before I tell you about my rebirth, I need to tell you about my fall, because only then will you understand why, when I was reborn to that very moment, I sneered instead of smiled. Back then, in my first life, I wore that foxtail ring until it withered and crumbled away. I kept it hidden inside my diary, pressed between the pages, like a sacred treasure. Every time I opened it, I remembered his promise. I reminded myself to be patient, to trust, to love, and I did, with all my heart. But slowly, little cracks began to appear. Adrian grew distant. His phone buzzed with messages he wouldn't let me see. He came home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. His smile became forced, his touch colder, yet still. I clung to that withered foxtail grass ring because I thought love meant holding on, even when it hurt. Because I thought promises meant something. Because I thought he meant what he said. I didn't realize then that I was loving a lie. A beautiful lie wrapped in the fragile circle of foxtail grass. That's where my story truly begins. Not with the ring itself, but with the blind devotion it represented. With the girl I used to be, the girl who gave everything for a man who gave her nothing but betrayal. And when that betrayal came crashing down on me, when my heart was torn to pieces, when my world ended, literally ended, fate laughed at me, and then it gave me a second chance. But we'll get there soon enough. For now, let me take you back to that girl in the golden field, smiling with tears in her eyes, believing in a promise that would never come true. The girl who thought a foxtail grass ring meant forever. The girl I used to be. The cruel, merciless awakening that tore me apart and left me begging for air in a world that no longer wanted me. T. First, it was little things. Adrian's calls I couldn't reach. His late nights explained away with excuses that sounded rehearsed. His laughter over the phone when I wasn't in the room. Laughter I hadn't heard from him in weeks. I told myself it was work, stress, maybe even surprise plans for me. After all, wasn't he the man who had promised me forever under that golden sky? But somewhere deep in my chest, a quiet voice began whispering, "Something is wrong," and I silenced it because I didn't want to believe. One night, I cooked his favorite meal, spaghetti with too much cheese and a sprinkle of oregano. He always insisted made it taste like love. But when he came home, he barely glanced at it. He pushed the plate away after one bite, claiming he wasn't hungry. He smelled faintly of wine. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie undone, and for the first time, I noticed a smudge of lipstick near his collar. I too wasn't my shade. I laughed it off, forcing a smile. "You're working too hard. Maybe you just brushed past a colleague." He looked at me then, a flicker of something in his eyes, guilt or irritation. I couldn't tell. "Stop overthinking," he muttered, grabbing a glass of water before heading straight to bed. And I followed him like a shadow, because I loved him too much to see the truth. Days turned into weeks. The distance between us grew wider. The man who once looked at me like I was his entire world now avoided my gaze. His touch was mechanical, his voice colder than winter winds, but still I clung to him, clung to that foxtail grass ring, pressed between the pages of my diary, as though it were a talisman that could keep us together. Then came the night my world shattered. It was raining. A heavy, punishing storm that soaked the city streets and washed away all pretense of warmth. Adrian said he had urgent work and wouldn't be home until late. Something in me cracked that evening. A whisper turned into a scream inside my chest. So I followed him. I wish I hadn't. I wish I had stayed home, naive, blind, sheltered, in ignorance, because what I saw that night was enough to kill me even before fate finished the job. Through the foggy window of a small CAF I saw him, Adrian, my Adrian, the man who had promised me forever, and across from him, laughing, glowing, leaning into his touch, was another woman. Her name was Evelyn. I recognized her instantly, his so-called colleague, the one whose name had popped up on his phone more times than I dared admit. And there they were, hands entwined, his lips brushing hers with a tenderness I hadn't felt in months. He kissed her the way he used to kiss me. He looked at her the way he once looked at me. As if she were his universe. As if I never existed. My body went numb. The rain drenched me, but I didn't feel the cold. My heart pounded so loud I thought the world could hear it breaking. I wanted to scream, to burst inside that CAF and demand answers, to throw the withered foxtail grass ring in his face and ask him what it had all meant, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching the illusion of love crumble into dust before my eyes. That night, I didn't confront him. I stumbled home, soaked and trembling, clutching the foxtail ring pressed inside my diary as though it could shield me from the pain. But all it did was remind me of my foolishness. How could I have believed him? How could I have thought a man like Adrian, with his stormy eyes and silver tongue, would ever give me forever? When he came home hours later, smelling of her perfume, I forced myself to pretend. I smiled. I asked about his work. I nodded as he lied through his teeth, and then I cried myself to sleep beside him, silent hair soaking my pillow, while he dreamt of someone else. That was the beginning of my end. The betrayal didn't stop there. It grew. It festered. It consumed me. Within weeks, whispers reached me, friends who pitied me too much to stay silent. Evelyn wasn't just a fling. She was his everything. The gifts he never bought me, he bought for her. The weekends he claimed were business trips, he spent in her arms. The promises he made me, he repeated to her, word for word. I was nothing more than a shadow, a backup, a fool clinging to a dream, while he built a new world without me. And yet, I stayed. Pathetic, isn't it? I told myself love could change him, that he'd return to me if I just held on longer, that the foxtail grass ring meant something, even if he had forgotten. But love doesn't heal betrayal. It only prolongs the agony. The breaking point came on my birthday. I waited all evening for him. I dressed up, lit candles, cooked again our favorite meal. But midnight passed. He never showed, and in the morning, I found out why. A photo, sent anonymously to my phone. Adrian and Evelyn, locked in a passionate embrace, celebrating in a hotel. Sweet, champagne glasses raised in a toast to a future that didn't include me. That photo burned into my mind. I stared at it until my vision blurred, and then, for the first time, I laughed, not the laughter of joy, but of madness. The sound of a woman who finally understood how completely, utterly betrayed she had been. The foxtail grass ring slipped from my fingers as I tore my diary apart. The pages fluttered like dying wings around me, and I collapsed, broken. That night, I wandered into the storm once again. My body moved without thought, my heart too shattered to care. I walked through traffic, through blinding rain, through the deafening roar of a world that no longer had a place for me, and then the screech of tires, the blinding flash of headlights, the sickening crack of bone and flesh. Pain exploded through me, sharp, hot, unbearable, and just like that, I was gone. My last thought, as darkness swallowed me, was of that ring, that fragile, meaningless ring of foxtail grass, and of his words, echoing like a curse. One day, I'll marry you. Lies. All of it, and yet, even in death I wept for him. Even in death, I loved him, but fate wasn't done with me. And oh, fate had a crueler plan, because when I opened my eyes again, I was back in that golden field. The sun was setting, the wind was soft, and Adrian was standing before me, smiling. That same boyish smile. His hands held a foxtail grass ring, and he whispered once again, one day, I'll marry you. The first breath after death was the strangest thing I had ever experienced. It felt wrong, foreign. My lungs filled with air, but my body trembled as though it didn't belong to me anymore. My eyes burned, my ears rang, my heart pounded against my chest, and then I saw him, Adrian, smiling, alive, holding out that same fragile foxtail grass ring. For a split second, I thought I was hallucinating, that maybe this was the afterlife, and I was doomed to relive the happiest moment of my life as a cruel punishment for my foolishness. But no, the air was too real, the warmth of the sun too sharp against my skin, the smell of wild grass too vivid, and then I realized I was back in that field, back on that day, back at the very beginning of my tragedy. In my past life, I had cried tears of joy. I had clutched his hands and whispered, I'll wait for that day. But this time, the tears didn't come. Instead, something inside me snapped. No, awakened. I looked at him, really looked at him, the charming smile, the glimmer in his eyes, the warmth of his voice. How had I ever thought this was love? All I could see now were lies, behind his smile, manipulation, behind his promise, betrayal, behind his tenderness, a storm waiting to consume me. I had died once believing in this man, never again. He slid the ring onto my finger, grinning as if he had given me the world. Someday, he whispered, I'll marry you for real. And in my past life, my heart had soared. But this time, my lips curved into something different. Not a smile, not joy, a sneer. Cold, cutting, the kind of sneer that would one day haunt him. I whispered back just as softly, of course, Adrian, but my words were poison, wrapped in honey. Inside, my mind raced. This was my second chance, my rebirth, and I wasn't going to waste it. You know what it feels like to die? To have your body crushed, your heart shattered, your soul torn apart, only to open your eyes again and see the very man who destroyed you, smiling like nothing had happened. It's maddening, but it's also liberating, because once you've died, once you've lost everything, you're no longer afraid. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I wasn't afraid of losing him, because I already had. As he hugged me, I stood stiff, my mind cold and clear. In my past life, I had clung to him, desperate, foolish, blind. This time, I let him hold me, but I didn't melt. Instead, I studied him the way a predator studies its prey, the way his eyes shifted, always calculating, the way his hands trembled slightly, not from nerves of love, but from the thrill of knowing he had me wrapped around his finger. No, Adrian, not this time. That night, I didn't place the foxtail grass ring gently on my nightstand like before. I didn't stare at it with love-filled eyes. Instead, I held it between my fingers, turning it slowly, studying every fragile thread of grass woven into its circle. So delicate, so breakable, just like his lies. With a smirk, I tucked it away, not into my diary this time, but into a small wooden box. A box I swore I would only open the day I ended this charade for good. In the days that followed, Adrian was the same as before, sweet, attentive, devoted, but I was in single quotes T. In my past life, I had fallen for his every word. This time, I listened carefully. I noticed the little inconsistencies in his stories, the names he mentioned too often, the way his phone buzzed late at night when he thought I wasn't looking, and with each passing day, my sneer grew sharper inside me. I remembered everything from my past life, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of agony, and most of all, Evelyn, the woman he left me for, the woman he gave his real promises to while I clung to a withered ring of grass. She would come into the picture soon enough. But this time, I would be ready. You know what the cruelest part of rebirth is? It's knowing the future, knowing the pain that's coming and having to walk back into it anyway. But here's the difference. I wasn't going to be the victim this time. I wasn't going to die broken and betrayed. This time, I would be the one holding the knife, and Adrian would learn what it meant to be destroyed. The first step was simple. I stopped chasing him. In my past life, I had orbited around him like a helpless moon circling its sun. But now, I pulled away. Subtly, slowly, I smiled when he spoke, but my eyes didn't soften. I held his hand, but my grip was loose. I kissed him, but my lips were cold, and he noticed. Oh, he noticed. One evening, he frowned at me. "You've been different lately," he said. In my past life, I would have panicked, begged him to explain, tried harder to please him. But this time, I tilted my head and gave him a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Have I?" I whispered. He studied me, searching for the girl who used to worship him. But she was gone. Dead. Buried. In her place stood someone colder, sharper, stronger, and though he didn't realize it yet, his control over me was already slipping. At night, while he slept, I lay awake, planning. Every memory from my past life became a weapon. I remembered the lies he told, the excuses he made, the exact dates he disappeared with Evelyn. This time, I wouldn't confront him with tears. I would confront him with evidence, with calm, cold truth that cut deeper than screams ever could. And when the time came, I would walk away, leaving him with nothing but the ruins of his own lies. For now, though, I played my part. I let him think I was still his, because revenge isn't served in a rush. It's served slowly, patiently, like a predator stalking its prey. And I had all the time in the world. After all, I had been given a second life, and I wasn't going to waste it on love. Still, in the quiet moments, when the anger dulled and silence filled the air, a strange emptiness gnawed at me. Yes, I was stronger now. Yes, I was ready to destroy Adrian. But beneath it all, I was still human, and humans crave love, not the fake kind Adrian gave me, but the real kind. And I couldn't help but wonder, in this second life, could I find it? But that was a thought for another day. For now, I stared at the foxtail grass ring hidden in its box, not as a symbol of love, but as a reminder of my past, a reminder of my rebirth, a reminder that this time I would not be the one kneeling in the rain, broken and discarded. This time, Adrian would be. When I woke up the next morning, the sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and golden. For a moment, I almost forgot I had been reborn. Almost. But then I looked at my hand resting on the bedsheet and remembered the foxtail grass ring in my past life. That silly little ring was the first engagement gift he ever gave me. I had treasured it as though it were diamond, wearing it proudly until it disintegrated. I even pressed it between the pages of my favorite book, as though that fragile strand of grass held the foundation of my happiness. But in truth, it was a ring of lies, because while I was twirling in joy, dreaming of our wedding, he was whispering promises to another woman behind my back. Now, lying in bed, staring at my hand, I couldn't help but sneer. How naive I was! How blind! I slipped out of bed and dressed carefully, choosing a pale blue dress that made me look soft and innocent just the way he liked me. Today, I would let him reenact his little romantic foxtail proposal. But this time, my smile would hide a storm. Later that day, we strolled by the riverbank, the same spot where everything had unfolded before. The air was fragrant with early summer blooms, and I knew what was coming. He stopped suddenly, bent down, and plucked a slender piece of foxtail grass. "Close your eyes," he said, his voice low, rehearsed, as if he'd done this 1,000 times. In my last life, my heart had skipped wildly. My cheeks had flushed. I had closed my eyes with trembling excitement. But this time, I just tilted my head and smiled faintly, obeying him with practiced calm. I felt the delicate touch of grass slipping onto my ring finger, the flimsy weight of that promise. "You're mine, forever," he whispered, just like before. His eyes glowed with sincerity, and any girl would have melted under such a gaze. But I wasn't any girl anymore. Opening my eyes, I looked down at the ring made of nothing but weeds. My lips curled, and I laughed softly, bitterly. "Forever?" I asked, tilting my head. "With a piece of grass." His smile froze, just for a second, before he quickly covered it with a playful grin. "It's just the beginning. Someday I'll replace it with diamonds. But for now, this is from my heart." I sneered openly this time, meeting his gaze. "From your heart? Or from the same heart you share with her?" The color drained from his face. He stiffened. Yes, he knew exactly what I meant. What are you talking about?" he stammered. I twirled the grass ring around my finger, as though mocking it. "Don't you dare act like you don't understand. Do you think I don't know about your filthy little lies? How many times did you make the same promise to her while I waited for scraps of your affection?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. His mask of charm was cracking. I leaned closer, my voice like ice. "This time, I won't fall for weeds dressed as love. Remember that." And then, without another glance, I slipped the foxtail grass ring off my finger, let it drop to the ground, and crushed it beneath my heel. The silence that followed was deafening. In my past life, that ring had been my treasure. In this life, it was nothing more than trash. His face darkened, eyes narrowing with something between shock and fury. "You've changed," he muttered almost to himself. I smiled coldly. "Yes, and you should be afraid." That night, I sat by my window, staring at the stars. My chest still burned with anger, but beneath it, there was something else: relief. For the first time, I had broken free from the spell of that cheap promise. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. His lies ran deeper than I could imagine, and my rebirth wasn't just about rejecting him. It was about exposing everything. This time, he wouldn't just lose me. He would lose the game entirely. When I returned to my seat, the ring's faint green glow still lingered in my mind. Not because it was precious, it wasn't, but because it had been the symbol of a choice, a promise, In my last life, it had marked the beginning of my downfall. This time, it would become the starting point of my rise. I smiled faintly, watching Aaron across the table. He laughed with the others, as charming as always. But his laughter didn't reach his eyes. He kept glancing at me like a predator checking to see if his prey had taken the bait. I didn't, and that unsettled him. "Lena," my mother's voice called softly beside me. "Why didn't you say yes? Aaron is a good boy, isn't he?" I turned to her, my chest tightening with the familiar ache. My mother had always believed Aaron was her future son-in-law. She trusted his family's polite words, his smiling face, and his supposed loyalty. In my past life, she encouraged me to accept his ring, believing I would be safe with him. How could she have known what a monster he truly was? I laid my hand over hers and smiled gently. "Mother, don't worry. I just don't think now is the right time." She blinked, taken aback by my calm refusal. "But trust me," I whispered, squeezing her hand. "You'll understand later." Her expression softened. She didn't push further, though I saw the worry in her eyes. As dessert was served, Aaron leaned closer, across the table, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "You embarrassed me," he muttered, his smile frozen in place for the others. I tilted my head innocently. "Did I? I thought it was just a game. Isn't foxtail grass fragile? How could you expect me to take that seriously?" His eyes darkened, but he quickly masked it with a chuckle. "You've grown sharper, Lena. I like it." I sipped my tea, my gaze unwavering. "No, Aaron, I'm not sharper. I'm simply awake this time." After dinner, the guests began leaving in groups. Some lingered to chat, while others slipped away into the cool evening air. I excused myself from the table and walked toward the garden, needing a moment of quiet. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint fragrance of roses. Lanterns glowed softly, casting golden pools of light along the stone path. And there, waiting by the fountain, stood Adrian. His tall figure was half-shadowed, but his eyes found me immediately steady, warm, and shaken. For a moment, I faltered, my heart tugging unexpectedly. He looked at me as if he could see straight through the layers of calm I had carefully wrapped around myself. "You came," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "I told you I would," he replied, stepping closer. "I wanted to see for myself if you were all right." A bitter laugh nearly slipped from me. All right. I had just faced the man who ruined my past life, and I had smiled through it all. But strangely, standing here with Adrian, the weight on my chest loosened slightly. "You saw everything," I murmured. He nodded. "I did. And I also saw that you handled it better than anyone else could have." For a moment, silence stretched between us. The fountain trickled, the night crickets sang, and yet his presence was louder than them all. "Adrian," I finally whispered, "do you believe in second chances?" He studied me quietly, his gaze unwavering. "I believe some people deserve them, and some don't." My lips curved faintly. "Good, because I intend to rewrite everything." His eyes softened, but there was a sharpness behind them, as though he understood more than I had said. Before either of us could continue, footsteps echoed on the path behind me. A familiar voice called, mocking, playful, and yet dripping with warning. "Lena, are you hiding something from me?" It was Aaron. I stiffened, but Adrian's hand brushed mine subtly, grounding me, and in that moment, I realized, this time, I wasn't alone. I remember staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, gripping the porcelain sink as though it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. My face was pale, my breath shaky. Just hours ago I had stood across from Aaron in that familiar CAF, staring at the same foxtail cross ring that once ruined me. It had felt surreal, like the world was folding back into itself, repeating, mocking me with the exact same cruel moment. But this time, I wasn't weak. This time, I had knowledge. And knowledge, I realized, was sharper than any weapon. I laughed bitterly at my reflection, whispering, "So, fate wants to play this game again. Fine, I'll play, but by my rules." That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, eyes wide open, every memory from my past life replaying vividly. Aaron's betrayal, his sweet words that turned sour, his broken promises. And her, the woman he chose over me, the one who had smiled in my face while stealing everything behind my back. I remembered the way Aaron had once cupped my hand tenderly, sliding that pitiful foxtail ring onto my finger, swearing, "It's a promise, Claire. Someday, I'll give you a real one. You're my forever." How easily I had believed, but not anymore. The next day at university, I found him waiting by the entrance, same charming smile, same boyish energy, as if yesterday's rejection hadn't cut him at all. "Claire," he called, jogging up to me, holding that stupid ring between his fingers. "You left in such a hurry yesterday." I didn't get to explain. I didn't let him finish. I turned my head sharply, my voice like ice. "There's nothing to explain. Aaron, take your weeds and give them to someone who cares." His grin faltered, his eyes narrowing slightly. He wasn't used to resistance. Not from me. Not from the girl who, in my past life, had adored him so shamelessly. But before he could say more, another voice cut in. "Good morning, Claire." It was Adrian. His presence alone shifted the atmosphere. Tall, poised, wearing his usual composed expression that made it hard to tell what he was thinking. His eyes, however, flickered briefly toward Aaron with clear disdain. Aaron stiffened, masking it with a forced laugh. "Oh, Adrian. Didn't know you'd be hanging around, Claire." Adrian's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "I could say the same about you." The tension between them was thick, almost suffocating. In my previous life, I had been too blind to notice these undercurrents, how Aaron's casual charm clashed with Adrian's silent dominance. But now, watching them, I could almost see the invisible lines being drawn. I cleared my throat and stepped aside. "I'm late for class." I walked away without looking back, but I could feel their eyes burning into my back. Aaron's desperate and frustrated, Adrian's protective and calculating. That day, whispers began to swirl. People noticed Adrian walking me to class, noticed Aaron trying and failing to joke his way into my attention, noticed how my once blind devotion to Aaron was gone. And oh, Aaron noticed to be by the end of the week, he cornered me again. This time, in the library. His smile was softer now, almost pleading. He held out the foxtail ring again, like he hadn't learned. "Claire," he whispered, "do you really hate me that much now? This ring, it's not just a joke. It's something special." I snapped the book I was holding shut and met his gaze coldly. "Do you even know what this ring meant in the past?" I asked. He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" I leaned in closer, lowering my voice, my words laced with venom. "It meant betrayal, Aaron. It meant lies. It meant wasting years of my life on someone who never truly loved me. So don't you dare hold it in front of me again." For a second, his mask slipped. Shock flickered in his eyes, then something darker, something almost dangerous. But before he could respond, Adrian appeared at the library entrance, scanning the room until his eyes found me. When our gazes met, a strange calm washed over me. I turned from Erin, clutching my books tightly, and walked straight toward Adrian. Without hesitation, I slipped past him, whispering softly, "Take me away from here." And he did. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but wonder, was I rewriting my fate, or walking straight into a new kind of danger? Because one thing was certain, Erin wasn't going to let me go so easily this time, and the foxtail ring, that cursed little circle of weeds, it wasn't done haunting me yet. I thought I was ready to face the truth, ready to cut ties, ready to burn down the bridges that had tied me to Ethan's world. But when I finally pushed open the door to his hospital room, my heart betrayed me. There he was, pale, lips chapped, breathing unevenly but alive. Alive in a way that made my soul ache. His hand still wore a thin bandage, and beside him on the nightstand lay that stupid little ring made of foxtail grass, the same kind of ring he gave me in our last life. And suddenly, I was no longer the reborn woman with her walls of steel. I was that foolish girl again, trembling before the boy who had once promised me forever. I clenched my fists. "No, not this time." "Why?" I demanded, my voice low, almost breaking. "Why do you keep lying, Ethan?" His eyes fluttered open, slow, heavy. The exhaustion in them was real, but so was the way they softened when they landed on me. "Lila," his lips parted, hoarse, like he had been calling my name even in his sleep. "You came." I almost laughed. Of course I came. I had come in the past life too every time. I came when he was hurt, when he was weak, when he needed me. I was always the one who ran to his side. And what did it give me? Betrayal. You don't get it, I said sharply. I didn't come because I care. I came for answers. He swallowed hard, trying to sit up, grimacing as his body fought him. I wanted to help him, but I stood rooted to the floor, frozen between instinct and reason. "The ring," I gestured toward the fragile loop of grass on the table. "Why? Why give it to me then? And why give it again now?" He looked at it, then at me, a faint, sorrowful smile curving his lips. "Because it was all I had." I felt a pang, unwanted and cruel. "All you had?" My voice cracked. "Then why, Ethan? Why swear forever with words so cheap they still sting in my bones?" He coughed weakly, his voice low, ragged but steady. "Because forever was all I wanted. Even if I couldn't give you gold or houses, or a life without pain. I thought if I tied you to me with something small, you'd see me. You'd stay." I froze. That wasn't the Ethan I remembered. The Ethan I knew in my last life. He wasn't desperate, wasn't humble, wasn't broken. He was arrogant, selfish, ruthless in how he used my love. And yet here he was, looking like the same boy I had once loved under the stars, his eyes carrying sincerity that shattered my breath. "No," I whispered, shaking my head, forcing myself to remember. "You don't get to twist it like this. You don't get to rewrite the past." I remember everything, and I did. I remembered the night I wore that foxtail grass ring, glowing with happiness, while Ethan whispered forever in my ear. I remembered believing him when he said I was his only love, and I remembered, years later, finding that same promise in another girl's hand, Jenny's hand, with the same words, the same faint devotion. He reused even his lies, my nails dug into my palms. You lied then, and you're lying now. I won't fall again. His gaze faltered, something like shame flickering across his face. But then, just as quickly, it hardened with something else, something that almost looked like desperation. What if I told you, he whispered, that I never gave it to her? That the foxtail ring you wore was the only one I ever made. My heart thundered in my chest. My lips parted, but no sound came out, because if that was true, if he never gave Jenny the same promise, then no, I couldn't let myself believe it. Stop, I whispered, turning toward the door, my chest tight. Just stop. I don't care anymore. But just as I reached for the handle, his voice cut through the silence, soft, trembling, but sharp enough to pin me in place. Then why are you crying, Lila? My hand froze. Only then did I feel it, the wet trail of tears sliding down my cheek, traitorous, raw, and uninvited. I thought my words would wound him, that my defiance would shatter his mask of confidence. But instead, Aaron laughed, a hollow, mocking sound that sliced through the air like broken glass. So, this is the new you, huh? He sneered. The one who thinks she can stand against me. Don't forget, I know everything about you, Ilura. Your weaknesses, your fears, even the way your heart still beats a little faster when I'm close. His words might have swayed the old me, the naive girl who confused obsession with love. But now I felt nothing but disgust. I turned my face away from him and smiled, a smile sharp enough to cut. Maybe my heart did race once, but now it races for freedom, Aaron, not for you. And that's something you'll never control again. For the first time, his composure cracked. A flicker of panic flashed in his eyes before he masked it with anger. You think you can just walk away from me? After everything? No, Ilura. You belong to me. Always have, always will. The intensity in his voice was suffocating. But this time, I wasn't alone. From behind me, a calm but firm voice echoed, grounding me like an anchor. She doesn't belong to anyone but herself. It was Rowan. He had been searching for me after hearing rumors of Aaron's return, and just like always, he appeared when I needed strength the most. Aaron's jaw tightened. And who are you supposed to be? Another fool she's using as a shield. Rowan stepped forward, his eyes unflinching. I'm the man who respects her choices. Something you'll never understand. The tension between the two was palpable. One was a storm of obsession, the other a steady flame of resolve. And there I stood, in the middle of the war between my past and my future. For a moment, silence stretched. Then Aaron's lips curled into a sinister smirk. Fine. If you want to play this game, Ilura, then let's play. But remember, when the truth about Rowan comes out, don't say I didn't warn you. My blood ran cold. What truth? Before I could demand an answer, Aaron slipped away into the shadows, his laughter echoing like a curse. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words haunted me, curling around my thoughts like vines. What truth was he hinting at? Was it just another one of his tricks? Or did Rowan truly hide something from me? I wanted to believe in Rowan, in the steady warmth he offered me. But hadn't I once believed Aaron too? Hadn't I once thought his foxtail grass ring meant forever? The memory of that moment replayed in my mind, him slipping the fragile stem around my finger, whispering promises he never intended to keep. And now, reborn, I had sneered at those same lies, cutting the chain that once bound me. But could I trust myself not to repeat history? The next morning, Rowan found me sitting on the balcony, lost in thought. You're troubled, he said softly. I looked at him, at his kind eyes and the steady reassurance in his presence. And for the first time since Aaron's return, I voiced my fear. Rowan, is there something you haven't told me? Something about your past? His expression shifted just slightly, but enough for me to notice. My heart sank at a dot. So Aaron was right. There was a truth hidden in Rowan's silence, and as much as I wanted to run from it, I knew I couldn't. Because if I truly wanted freedom, I needed the whole truth, even if it broke me. The days that followed were quiet on the surface, yet turbulent within my heart. Every morning, I went to the hospital to check on Ethan's progress. His condition was stable now, but he was still unconscious, and every time I saw him lying there with pale skin and bandages, my chest tightened with a mixture of guilt and strange bitterness. I should have walked away long ago. I should have never allowed myself to believe that his foxtail grass ring meant anything more than empty lies. But here I was reborn, wiser, sharper, and yet my emotions still tangled in the thorns of our shared past. One afternoon, as I stood by his bed, I whispered, "Ethan, why did you give me that ring if your love was never true? Why did you let me be the fool?" He didn't answer, of course. Only the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor filled the silence. I turned, ready to leave, when I caught sight of her, Rachel. She walked into the ward with a bouquet of fresh lilies, her expression laced with guilt and sorrow. She froze when she saw me. "Sophia, you're here again?" "Yes." My voice was calm, almost indifferent. "Unlike you, I don't abandon people when they're down." Her face stiffened, but she forced a smile. "You've misunderstood. I save it." I cut her off. "Whatever excuse you rehearsed, I'm not interested. I've seen enough of your schemes to last 2 lifetimes. Her grip on the flowers tightened. "Schemes? Sophia, do you really think I would hurt Ethan?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You tell me. That night, the accident was it really just a coincidence? Or were you too desperate to get rid of me?" Her face drained of color, and for a moment, her mask slipped. She stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." But her trembling hands betrayed her. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Don't play innocent. I'm not the same naive Sophia you toyed with before. If you want Ethan so badly, fine. Take him. But know this: when the truth comes out, the shame and disgust in his eyes will be your undoing, not mine." Rachel's lips quivered, but she said nothing. She placed the flowers by Ethan's bed, then hurriedly left, her heels clicking against the sterile floor. I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling slightly. Confronting her hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. That night, back at the small apartment I rented, I lay awake replaying the scene over and over. My mind drifted to the day Ethan had first given me that foxtail grass ring, so simple yet full of promises. In my past life, I had cried tears of joy. I had believed every word. In this life, I sneered. Filthy lies, I whispered into the darkness. Never again. But fate has a way of testing resolve. 2 days later, Ethan regained consciousness. When I entered his ward, he was awake, his eyes unfocused but searching. When they landed on me, something flickered across his face: relief, longing, regret. "Sophia." His voice was hoarse, weak, but filled with an emotion that made my heart skip unwillingly. I steeled myself. "You should rest." He shook his head slightly, wincing from the pain. "I thought I lost you that night. I thought I'd never open my eyes to see you again." For a moment, silence stretched between us. His sincerity tugged at old wounds. tempting me to believe again. But I remembered Rachel's trembling hands, the lies, the betrayal. I forced a bitter smile. You didn't lose me, Ethan. But maybe you should have. His eyes widened slightly, confusion flickering within them. What do you mean? I mean, I whispered coldly, that I don't have the strength to be your fool anymore. That foxtail grass ring you gave me, it was never a promise, it was just a chain you tied me with. His lips parted, but no words came. I could see the pain in his eyes, a pain that almost mirrored my own. Almost, but I wasn't the same girl anymore. I turned away, saying softly, "Rest well, Ethan. You'll need all your strength when the truth finally catches up to you." And then I walked out, leaving him staring after me, pale and shaken. As I stepped into the crisp evening air outside the hospital, I realized something. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about me, my rebirth, my choices, my power to finally break free. Yet deep down, I knew the storm was only just beginning. The morning after my walk outside the hospital, I sensed it in the air, tense, suffocating, like a storm waiting to break. I returned to the ward, expecting Ethan to be quiet, recovering, maybe still lost in dreams. But instead, I found Rachel there. Her presence hit me like a cold gust of wind. She was holding a folder, papers peeking out, and her expression was sharp, determined. This wasn't the timid, apologetic Rachel I had confronted days ago. This was someone dangerous. "Sophia," she said smoothly, her eyes calculating. "We need to talk." I folded my arms, leaning against the wall. "About what? How you planned to ruin me? Or how you almost succeeded?" Her lips twitched, but she held my gaze. "You think you know everything, don't you? But you have no idea what really happened that night." I felt my chest tighten. My heart, my mind, everything screamed at me to stay calm, but inside, adrenaline surged. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. She placed the folder on the bedside table, flipping it open. There were documents, photographs, evidence that, if true, could change everything I thought I knew. "The accident," she began, her voice steady but low. "You think I caused it. But the truth is much worse. And if Ethan wakes up knowing the real story first, well, you won't like it." My stomach sank. I had survived Erin's lies, Ethan's betrayal, Rachel's schemes. But the way she said it, there was a venomous confidence behind her words that told me this wasn't a bluff. I clenched my fists. "If you think scaring me will work, think again. I'm not the same girl who trusted you before." She smiled thinly. "Good. Then maybe you'll listen." Later that afternoon, Ethan finally managed to sit up on his own. His bandages were gone, though faint scars traced his skin like reminders of the accident. His eyes searched mine soon. As he saw me, "Sophia," he whispered. "Rachel was here." I nodded. "Yes. And she brought evidence." His expression darkened. "Evidence? Of what?" I hesitated, then handed him the folder. His eyes scanned the pages quickly. Medical reports, security camera footage, even photographs of the car accident scene. And then his jaw tightened. This isn't what I thought," he muttered, voice shaking. I thought it was all my fault." "No," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "It's not just your fault. And it's not hers alone either. This accident, it's a tangle of choices, lies and betrayal that everyone has tried to rewrite. But I'm done being fooled." Ethan looked up at me, eyes wide, searching for answers. "Then, why are you helping me?" I shook my head. "I'm not helping you. I'm protecting myself. You're a part of my past, Ethan. And this time, I control the story. That evening, Aaron reappeared unexpected, aggressive, almost manic. He had found out Rachel had been tampering with Ethan's recovery documents and using it to manipulate him. You really think you can play everyone against each other and win? Aaron sneered, his eyes dark with fury. You're just as fragile as she was. And soon, she'll fall apart, just like before. I stepped forward, letting my calmness become my weapon. Not this time. Not me. Aaron's smirk faltered. His usual charm couldn't hide the fear now. You think you're clever, don't you? But truth always finds a way to reveal itself. And when it does, you won't like what you see. I let the words wash over me, not replying. I had learned that silence often hit harder than anger. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, the foxtail grass ring, the symbol of everything I had once cherished and despised, glimmered faintly in the wooden box I kept it in. I traced its fragile threads with my finger, remembering every moment it had marked: joy, betrayal, rebirth. And now, revenge. A plan was forming in my mind, sharp and precise. Aaron wouldn't know what hit him. Ethan would have to face the truth on my terms. And Rachel, she would learn that underestimating me had been her gravest mistake. For the first time, I felt complete control. And I smiled, cold, unrelenting, victorious, because this time, I wasn't just living to survive. I was living to reclaim everything. The air was thick that evening, heavy with tension. Aaron had called me to meet him at the rooftop of the university building, under the pretense of clearing the air. But I knew better. I wasn't the same girl who had once run blindly into his arms. This time, I had eyes wide open. I stepped onto the rooftop, the city lights glittering below like a sea of stars. Aaron was already there, leaning against the railing with that same arrogant smirk, his hands in his pockets, exuding confidence. You came, he said casually, as though he hadn't tormented me for years. I came to see the truth, I said evenly. And to make sure you know I'm not afraid of you anymore. His smirk faltered, just slightly. Bold words. But do you really think you can walk away from me that easily? I stepped closer, my eyes cold, unwavering. I don't just think it. I know it. Because this time, I control the game. And you've been playing your tricks for far too long. Aaron's eyes darkened. You think you're clever, don't you? But you have no idea what's coming. That foxtail ring wasn't just a promise, it was part of a bigger plan. And you stop. My voice cut sharply through the wind. Stop pretending that you have power over me. That ring was lies, manipulation, nothing more. And now it's useless. You're powerless, Aaron. Your games are over. For a long moment, he said nothing. His jaw tightened, his fingers clenching into fists. Then he laughed, low and dangerous. You really are different this time, he said. I like it. But do you think you can escape your past entirely? Do you really think Rowan and Ethan can protect you forever? I tilted my head, calm and unflinching. You underestimate me. I don't need protection, I need justice. And justice is coming for everyone who betrayed me. At that moment, Rowan stepped out of the shadows, his tall frame solid and unwavering. She's not alone, Aaron. And she never will be. Aaron's smirk faltered further. So this is your new army. Rowan, Rachel, the whole pathetic cast of people pretending to care. Rowan didn't reply. His gaze locked on Aaron, steady and unyielding, a silent warning that I didn't need to speak. I finally took a step closer to Aaron, my voice soft but sharp. You told me lies, manipulated everyone around me, and thought I'd fall again. But this time, I'm not the girl who believed in your foxtail ring. Aaron's face darkened. Then what are you now? I let my gaze drop to the small wooden box in my hand. I opened it slowly, letting the ring glint faintly under the rooftop lights. This, I whispered, is a symbol of the past. And I'm destroying it. Not for you, not for them, but for me. I lifted my foot and crushed the fragile ring under my heel. The sound of it breaking was almost audible against the hum of the city below. Aaron's eyes widened. You destroyed it. I nodded. And so I destroy every chain you thought you had over me. Every lie, every betrayal, every promise you never meant to keep. He looked at me, rage and shock battling in his eyes. This isn't over, I smiled coldly. Oh, it's just beginning. But this time, I decide the rules. And with that, I turned, letting the rooftop wind whip around me, carrying away the chains of my past. Aaron stood frozen, his hands trembling slightly as he watched me leave. Rowan fell into step beside me. You were incredible, he said quietly. I gave a small, wry smile. This time, I'm not just surviving. I'm winning. And as we walked away from the rooftop, I knew it, the real war, the one for truth, justice, and my future, was only just beginning. The storm had been brewing for weeks, tension tightening around me like a noose. Aaron's relentless games, Rachel's manipulations, Ethan's secrets, all of it converged on this night. The university's auditorium had been chosen as the stage for the confrontation. A charity event, filled with faculty, students, and unsuspecting guests. Perfect for exposing lies. Perfect for reclaiming my power. I stood behind the velvet curtain, Rowan by my side. The foxtail grass ring crushed but never forgotten rested in my palm as a reminder of what I had endured and survived. Are you ready? Rowan asked softly. I nodded. More than ever. Tonight, the truth comes out. And this time, no one can lie their way out of it. The lights dimmed, a hush falling over the audience. Aaron appeared on stage, the picture of charm and confidence. He had no idea what was coming. He began to speak, weaving his usual tale of charm and deceit, smiling at everyone, pretending to be the innocent victim. But then, I stepped forward. Everyone here deserves to know the truth, I announced, my voice steady and sharp, echoing through the auditorium. About Aaron, about Rachel, about the lies that nearly destroyed me. Gasps filled the room. Aaron froze mid-sentence, his smirk faltering. I held up the folder Rachel had brought days ago, now full of proof photos, documents, medical reports. This, I said, shows the schemes, the manipulation, and the betrayals. And the person who thought they could control me was wrong. Aaron's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I continued. The foxtail grass ring he gave me wasn't a symbol of love, it was a chain. A promise meant to trap me, to make me believe in a future that never existed. And Rachel here, I turned to her, who stood frozen in the corner, tried to manipulate Ethan and me to serve her own ends. Rowan stepped forward, his gaze deadly calm. And anyone else who thought they could interfere with Sophia's life, let this be a warning. She is not a pawn. She is not yours to control. The room was silent. Every eye fixed on Aaron and Rachel, their carefully constructed images of innocence crumbling. Aaron's voice finally came out, shaky and almost desperate. You think you can destroy me? You're just one girl. I smiled faintly, unwavering. I'm not just one girl. I'm the girl who survived your lies, your betrayal, and your manipulation. And this, I raised my hand, letting the crushed remnants of the foxtail ring fall to the floor. Is freedom. The ring shattered into pieces, glittering faintly under the lights. And in that moment, all the power he had once held over me vanished. Rachel tried to speak, to defend herself, but the truth was undeniable. The documents, the photos, the evidence, it all pointed to their deceit. Ethan, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, his eyes wide with realization. I was wrong. I trusted them blindly. Sapphire, you were right all along. My heart tightened. This was never about revenge, it was about reclaiming what I had lost, rewriting the story that fate had once tried to trap me in. Aaron's smirk had disappeared, replaced with fear and disbelief. He realized that for the first time, I held all the power. I turned to the audience, my voice firm, resolute. Let this be a lesson. Lies can only survive for so long, and the truth always finds its way. The applause that followed wasn't just for me. It was for the reclamation of truth, for surviving betrayal, for stepping into one's own power. Rowan took my hand, and I finally allowed myself to breathe. For the first time in years, I felt complete, whole and free. The shattered foxtail ring at my feet was no longer a symbol of past pain. It was a testament to my strength, my rebirth, and the future I had fought to claim. And as I looked at the people who had tried to deceive me, I smiled softly. This time, the story ended on my terms. The night ended not with sorrow, but with triumph. I had faced my past, confronted lies, and emerged stronger. The foxtail grass ring, once a symbol of betrayal, now lay in pieces, reminding me that I was never bound by anyone's promises but my own. And as I walked into the future, hand in hand with Rowan, I realized something. Rebirth wasn't just a second chance at life. It was a second chance at power, clarity, and love that was truly deserved. I had chosen my destiny. I had chosen freedom. And I had chosen myself.